So computers are notoriously these really expensive machines. Like I've got my good one down there. RGB, a lot of money spent on it. But what if I said you don't have to spend that much money to get a good computer? This is a little Acer machine that I got off of Gumtree in Australia for only 40 AUD. It's got a 3rd Gen i5, a 120GB SSD. The Gumtree listing just said NVIDIA GPU, so I don't actually know what GPU is in this thing. I also don't know how much RAM, but only $50 AUD. So I want to see, can you get a machine that'll do gaming, do all the stuff you need it to, for that cheap? Let's open her up. So this is the machine here. It's just got a thumb screw on the side here, and I believe this is a Acer pre-built. So of course, as pre-builts do, it's got one funky thing where this side panel you need to push down on this tab, and then you can open it. But in here, we've got our machine. In here we've got a Cooler Master cooler. So for a 3rd Gen i5, that's actually pretty good. It's got this giant tower thing on it, which a lot of pre-builts will have, which essentially just means it's constantly pulling in fresh air and exclusively fresh air. What power supply have we got here? 480 watts, which isn't a massive amount, but it's more than adequate. Oh, but it's only got a 4-pin CPU connector, and I think a 20-pin motherboard connector, but it's also got an 8-pin PCI connector. We've got one SATA cable that's plugged in and doesn't go to anything. We've got our SSD here, which is a really nice Intel one. An Intel SSD of the 530 series, 120GB. No sort of hard drive or anything. I'm pretty sure this is DDR3 RAM. Let me just pop out a stick. Oh, blue PCB. That's not something you see every day. So in total, we've got 8 gigs of RAM in here. This GPU is actually not clicked into the PCI socket. Oh, golly. This is a very dusty GPU. Do we have a number on it anyway? Ooh, G210. 512 megabytes of RAM on it. So it's definitely, well, a workstation PC, I'll give it that. Most workstation PCs, graphics cards aren't great. So I'll chuck this one in just for the moment. So for $50 AUD, it's really not bad. But either way, let's chuck the side panel back in. Let's plug it in to a test bench. Let's plug it into power and see if we can get it running. Okay, I've got the computer all hooked up and everything down here. That fan has seen better days, but it does spin to life. I've been told it has Windows 10 on it. Download a few benchmark tools and whatnot and see how it goes. So I've got the computer up and running on my test bench. i5, 8 gigs of RAM. But I don't know what it is about this graphics card, but I cannot for the life of me get graphics drivers to download, which means I can't really do any game testing. But I've got 8 gigs of DDR3 here, i5 3rd Gen. So since I can't really test it with the graphics card, but I'll tell you this now, a graphics card like that, you could maybe play something like Minecraft that doesn't really require a graphics card that much. But I've got a plan for this computer, because the CPU, while it's not great, it's not horrendous. So I'm going to open her up, and I'm going to give her a few upgrades. And while staying on a very short budget, I'm going to turn this $50 computer into a gaming PC, while staying under $150. Let's open her up. Okay, we're back into here. Now there's a few glaring issues with this PC. Now let's tackle the biggest one first, this graphics card, as I've said. As I've made abundantly clear, this GPU is not good. And so just straight off the bat, getting rid of this. We need to replace this. This is going away. For 80 AUD dollars, I got this Sapphire Nitro RX 470, with the main concern being that this fan, when it's going, is quite loud. That's why it was so cheap, but a new fan for that is $15. I've already ordered one to replace it, but I'm not adding that to the total, because we're not worried about volume here, we're worried about budget for performance. So it doesn't matter that it's loud. It's all clicked in. The thermals for this should be fine. There we go. Let's use a graphics card as a tool to push something in. We've now also got our RX 470 graphics. Let's run TimeSpy from 3D Mark to get a benchmark on how the computer performs. I've switched off my noise suppression mic for a second. That is not something you see every day. That computer has a speaker in it that not just does BIOS beeps, but plays any audio you need. I have not hooked up a speaker. So 3D Mark, our score is 3,633, with a graphics score of 3,839, and a CPU score of 2,786, which is, while no means groundbreaking, is pretty good. I've got a more basic game like Portal 2 hooked up, And Portal 2 is currently running at about 260 FPS, which is more than playable and looks great. But Portal 2 is also very easy to run. Generally, if something can't run Portal 2, it's not going to run anything. Just loading up another random game, we've got Gang Beasts here, which is running at 300 FPS, and once again, looks great. In a more graphically intensive game, like Assassin's Creed, which I don't know what's up with the counter, but they're both the graphics card and the CPU are having issues. But it's running at about 51 FPS, which is by no means amazing, but it's definitely playable, and pretty good for the price point too. And for a gaming machine of this quality, all I did was put a graphics card into a workstation PC. It's getting up to about 60 FPS at some points, and very occasionally getting up to closer to 70, but is averaging at about 57 to 50. Sure, this might be an older generation. Sure, it might not be the most powerful machine in the world. But for only 150 bucks, for 130 bucks, so we can fit the new fan into a budget of 150. We've got a machine that, while won't run the newest of games, will run a fair few games, will run everything you need it to, and you didn't even have to build anything yourself. You had to switch out one graphics card, so which means practically anyone could do it. So if you're looking for a budget machine, and I mean like really budget, I'd always recommend getting a pre-built like this. Be careful about what pre-built you buy. Chuck a good graphics card in it, and you've got a pretty good system for cheap. The only thing I'd really do with this one still is maybe chuck in some better storage. The SSD, by that I mean the SSD is pretty good, I just need more storage. So maybe like a hard drive. Zach in post, I had a hard drive lying around, so I just kind of added one later. Now once I fix that fan, and maybe add a wireless card there, so it's got wireless internet, it's going to be a pretty good budget gaming machine. But anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. It would help out a ton, as I'm a small tech creator. Comment down below if you think this is a good PC for the price. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.